up on this month's 219 West, Financial Literacy 101, Geneva Sansadowitz looks into what New Yorkers know and don't know about money. Modern Warfare is one of the hottest video games of the holidays, and one of the most controversial. John Petro shows us why. And CNN's Christiane Amanpour has reported from every corner of the globe. Rima Abdelkader talks with the award-winning international journalist on the set of her new show.
It's one of the very rare programs on American television which talks about international stories, international affairs.
Hello, and welcome to this month's edition of 219 West, the monthly news magazine produced by students at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism for CUNY-TV. I'm Rima Abdelkader.
And I'm Brian Winkowski. Also in this month's 219 West, a look at diversity within the Latino community, and a special report from Swaziland, a country ravaged by HIV. The report was prepared by one of our fellow students working in cooperation with an NGO. But we begin this show by talking money, and how much people know or don't know about their finances. Geneva Sansadowitz has been looking into this. Geneva?
Brian, we're entering into the holiday season and the busiest shopping month of the year. Retail sales are playing an important part in the overall economic recovery, but it is also a time when people become acutely aware of their own finances. A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research says that financial illiteracy is widespread. This is particularly severe among women, young people, and the less educated. To explore this further, we take a look at the state of financial literacy in our city. We begin by asking some people, how knowledgeable are you about money?
I try to do what I can with my own finances, but I really don't know that much as the way things work.
I'm pretty educated right about now, having a budget, everything needs to be budgeted, especially around this holiday season.
Because sometimes you get a little bit worried about, oh gosh, do I have enough? Am I able to do this?
Lynn Wilson, a musician and marketing consultant living in Fort Greene, has struggled with understanding and managing her finances. As a freelancer without a steady income, she is faced with the task of being her own CEO, HR manager, and payroll coordinator in one. She recently decided to take action and get help. Lynn began working with counselor Giselle Barker at a local training center called Fort Greene SNAP to better understand her finances. Barker started the financial training program a year ago to help community members. SNAP is open to the public and offers free counseling. Why is it that you think financial literacy is so important?
Parents, when they talk to their children, they talk about all these other basics and all these other necessities. Brush your teeth, say your prayers before going to bed. But no one ever really sits down with a child to tell them how to balance a checkbook, how to start up a bank account. And because of that lack of education, a lot of people have fallen into hard times.
She teaches people to create a spending plan, tells them that financial troubles are temporary, and that they should face their situation head on. Lynn sees Fort Greene SNAP as a safe space to discuss her personal finances. Sitting in one of her neighborhood cafes, she opened up about her lack of financial knowledge.
I am educated, I've worked many jobs, and I've made a lot of money. And you would think that with all of that experience, there would be like a lot of resource and a lot of surplus. And I'm rather surprised that I don't have as much as I thought I would. Right now, the need to be able to balance my monies as they come in, and they don't always come in at an even rate. So it really concerned me in a good way to kind of take advantage of some of the opportunities that were like right in my community.
To help increase financial literacy throughout the city, the Department of Consumer Affairs has created a network of smaller neighborhood organizations like the SNAP. This is to help people get the resources they need.
It's one thing to read a great website, it's another thing to read a great book. It's terrific to sit in a class where there's a great instructor, but at the end of the day, what most people really need is to be able to sit down with somebody who's a professional, who can take a look at your particular situation, and that's what we're able to do in this citywide network of centers.
Commissioner Jonathan Mintz believes the next step is getting the word out about resources that are already available.
And so trying to make it as easy as possible for people to take that first step. Financial education is really a key ingredient in protecting yourself from potential poor decisions.
Dr. Robert Duvall is working on this problem as a member of the President's Advisory Council on Financial Literacy. He and other experts are trying to figure out just how wide the financial literacy gap is and how to narrow it.
Certainly more attention is being paid today than was true just a few years ago to the issue of financial illiteracy. And I think the financial crisis that we're still living and working through has contributed enormously.
As the CEO of the Council for Economic Education for almost 15 years, Duvall worked to promote stronger financial education in schools. He says teachers can have a significant impact.
It is important to keep trying to get this basic skill set into the heads and hands of young people while they are in school before it's too late.
It has been a challenge for Lynn to pay off debt, rein in spending, and learn how to manage her finances. She says educating herself was the first step.
If I do not do this, my future is like, it gets smaller, you know, and I want a big future. So it's a step-by-step process to that end. So yeah, I feel good about it.
The possible irony of the recession is that for many it has been a wake-up call, and it may actually make people more knowledgeable about their finances. One way for New Yorkers to find out about available resources is by calling 311 or by logging onto the website mymoney.gov.
Next, we take a look at the world of video games. Video game violence has been a controversial subject for more than a decade. With the technological advancements in this generation of gaming machines, that violence continues to be portrayed more realistically than ever before. Modern Warfare 2 is the latest game to come under fire for its lifelike violence. 219 West's John Petro takes a closer look at the controversy causing this phenomenon.
The holiday shopping season is in full swing, and video games are flying off the shelves. The gaming industry reportedly took in $22 billion in 2008, and this year's numbers should be close to that record. As thousands of gamers unwrap their presents, they will digitally transform themselves into whatever they wish to be. A last surviving member of humanity, fighting off hordes of zombies. Traveling back in time to become an assassin, or countless more fantasies to be fulfilled. But the biggest game hitting stores this year is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the sequel to the 2007 smash hit. In the game, players control various military personnel as the world is on the brink of World War III. Modern Warfare 2 makers Activision Blizzard Incorporated says the game sold 4.7 million copies in its first day of release back in early November, and earned more than $500 million in its first 5 days. But the game's success isn't without its controversies. In a level called No Russian, acting as an undercover CIA agent, players infiltrate a terrorist group as they are about to attack an airport in Russia. The results are brutal and graphic.
And I think the vast majority are going to look at it and be horrified.
Stu Horvath is a staff reporter for the New York Daily News and reviewed Modern Warfare 2 for the paper.
I would like to meet somebody whose first impulse and they went through killing everybody that they possibly could in that level and as their first impulse, because I really don't think that person exists. I mean, they probably do, but I'd probably not want to meet them.
Violent video game players usually tend to be more aggressive to begin with. That's why they choose to play those games.
Florette Cohen is an assistant professor of psychology at the College of Staten Island and spoke about the psychology of playing violent video games.
They get kind of a rush when playing the games, and after about maybe 15, 20 minutes or so, it kind of starts to decrease, meaning it went out of their system. So they get like a high while they're playing, and then it pretty much comes down.
What makes this level different is that players don't need to shoot the civilians in order to get to the next level. They can simply watch the horror unfold on their television screens, or they can choose to mow down as many civilians as they'd like. The choice is completely up to the players.
The impact sort of diminishes immediately because if you are, any kind of reasonable human being, you're not going to shoot at them.
It's a little bit confusing in the beginning to actually know that you can choose not to shoot anyone. I mean, what happens is once you've been shooting all along, people start to become numb to the violence. It's like, okay, let's just keep shooting without any idea of, the consequences.
Activision did not return messages asking for comment on this story, leaving us only to guess what the developers' intentions for including this level were.
It tried for that emotional thing. It tried to make me think about terrorism and warfare and like the first game did. But this, in trying so hard, it missed the point.
Did our experts participate in a brutal and fake terrorist attack?
Accidentally at first. I didn't realize quite what was going on, and I popped a couple shots off, and then I was really horrified at myself, and I stopped.
I think that I wouldn't be playing this game to begin with. It was repulsive. Excuse me for saying so.
On November 10th, I was one of the millions to buy Modern Warfare 2 the day it came out. Later on that night, I experienced the no Russian level firsthand. I was unprepared and unguarded, and I may have shot one or two innocent civilians. That doesn't make me a bad person, does it? Rima?
We'll see. Modern Warfare may be a game to some, but it's a reality for Christiane Amanpour. As CNN's chief international correspondent, she has reported on major crises from the world's major hotspots, from the Middle East, the Persian Gulf, Europe, and Africa. She is now reporting mainly from New York as host of a new program aptly named Amanpour. We caught up with her on the set of her new show on a very busy news day. When 219 West arrived on the set of Christiane Amanpour's new show, Amanpour,
she's in Manila. They know where she is. International.
there was breaking news of a massacre of 57 people in a southern region of the Philippines.
Say the deadliest ever, right?
Never in the history of journalism have the news media suffered such a heavy loss of life in one day.
Wow. Yeah, in one day.
Wow.
The Amanpour team was scrambling to find an expert from the Philippines who could provide insight into the killings.
We really pulled together. I mean, this would be, our big hit, the top of the show.
And they found one.
Tonight, a gruesome massacre in the Philippines.
The journalists who were killed were actually going to an event where a candidate was just filing his nomination papers for an election that will happen 6 months from now.
Afterwards, Amanpour sat down with the crew of 219 West to talk about her new show.
It's one of the very rare programs on American television which talks about international stories, international affairs, brings you really vital information from abroad that's vital to Americans and American security and American, knowledge right now.
The new program focuses on a single issue for a half an hour. It broadcasts overseas 5 nights a week, and then Amanpour has an hour program that broadcasts in the U.S. on Sunday afternoons.
We're harking back on my program, I think, to the original mandate of CNN when Ted Turner started it in 1980, and that is to show the world to the world, to viewers here in the United States and around the world.
Amanpour is keeping traditional journalistic values and using some new tools to accomplish that.
About new media, we harness it, we use it. You can see that we have Facebook, we have Twitter. We're very, very devoted to our CNN.com page. Social media is a lot of eyewitness reporting, very valuable, but it is not yet, and I don't think should be, a replacement for experienced journalists, for journalism which goes out and checks sources and relies on its credible and trusted reporters.
Amanpour is critical of commentators who don't offer fact-based reporting.
rival clans was closely...
You know, a lot of what happens on social media is commentary. A lot of what happens on many of the cable networks right now is commentary, what I call armchair pundits who sit back and who give their opinions from thousands and thousands of miles away on what's happening in a village in Afghanistan or in, a new endeavor in Iraq or wherever it might be. Now, commentary has always been part of journalism, but what I'm saying is that it should not overtake fact-based reporting, because if you don't know what's the facts and what the truth is, then there's no bar to measure anything by.
And what about cutbacks in international reporting?
All I hear from bosses is, oh, the American people don't care about international affairs. Oh, they don't care about the rest of the world. Or even worse and even more, I think, offensive to the American people, a lot of bosses say, oh, Americans, too silly, too stupid to understand what's going on in the world. I mean, it's really appalling. And I think people should start standing up for their rights. And information is a fundamental civil and human right.
Where do you see the future of broadcast news going?
There's a lot to be pessimistic about, but I'm an eternal optimist. And I believe in pointing to the successes in broadcast journalism. You can look at 60 Minutes, you can look at Nightline, you can look in the radio sphere at NPR, WNYC here in New York, all these really brilliant journalistic enterprises which are doing well. I'm sorry about what's happening to newspapers, and I hope to God the business model can somehow regain its footing, because a world without newspapers is a world that I don't want to live in. You will not grow up in a strong democratic society if you don't have a strong, independent and rigorous press. And that's what's at risk today.
Do you miss being on the front lines?
I feel I'm still on the front lines. First of all, I haven't stopped traveling, and I'm still going abroad, and I still will, and I will travel this program. It's only been up and running for 3 months. But what I'm doing here is I am on the front lines of fact-based reporting. I am bringing into the studio exactly what I used to do in the field. So I'm still, I believe, on the front lines of something that's increasingly important, and that is real, source-driven, credible, fact-based information. And then people can make up their minds and comment about it and have opinions about it. But a world without real information is a world that's weakened and impoverished.
So what's her next assignment? We'll keep you posted.
Recently, our colleague Nick Loomis reported from Africa on the AIDS crisis. He worked with a non-governmental organization, or NGO, which are filling in the gaps left by traditional news organizations that are closing bureaus. We will hear how that arrangement came about in a few moments, but first, here's Nick's story.
What you are seeing is part of an annual harvest festival in Swaziland called Umhlanga. The weeks-long celebration is the central holiday in a country that reveres tradition. Surrounded in 3 directions by South Africa and in the east by Mozambique, the tiny landlocked kingdom of Swaziland is home to just slightly over 1 million people, 70% of whom are under the age of 30 and 40% under the age of 14. With the world's highest rate of HIV infection at 26%, it's no surprise that Swaziland also has the world's lowest life expectancy. According to the most recent estimates released by the CIA World Factbook, the average Swazi will not live past 32 years of age. With few elders surviving to pass on their customs, traditions like Umhlanga also face an early demise. As tragic as it seems, the loss of cultural identity is the least of the problems facing this nation of orphans.
This is monumental. There are very few countries in the world where there's a proportion of orphans who in the next 10 to 15 years are going to be the elders of the nation. And they're not even going to be 30 years old. You got to prepare them for that.
Dr. Elizabeth Hynd started the New Hope Center and Orphanage in 2002, and today the faith-based compound near the city of Manzini is home to 60 of Swaziland's estimated 120,000 orphans. Despite her belief in miracles, Dr. Hynd knows she can't care for that many vulnerable children, so she decided to approach the problem at the grassroots level.
How can we equip teachers, young people in the community, caregivers with the skills to help those children deal with what's happening inside them so that they can function. And unless we can do that nationwide, our tomorrow is pretty scary.
The reasons for Swaziland's scary future have been enabled by some of its steadfast cultural traditions. Africa's only remaining monarch, King Mswati III, has been widely criticized at home and abroad for continuing the kingly practice of polygamy in the age of HIV. With 14 wives, the king's example is said to justify polygamy and infidelity among his subjects.
The Swazis, they believe it's part of their culture to have as many partners as they can convince.
The prevalence of multiple and concurrent partners explains in part why so many in Swaziland have contracted HIV. In order to promote early testing, organizations like AIDS Healthcare Foundation in Swaziland have worked quite successfully to destigmatize the disease. However, those efforts may have backfired in the prevention effort.
It's become so common that people are not afraid anymore. They just shrug and then say, okay, I'm one of them now, and at least I'm going to be taking those tablets from now on.
Government-subsidized antiretroviral medications prolong life for many Swazis with HIV, but lack of access to the drugs, poverty, inadequate education, and a growing indifference to the disease have compounded the pandemic, and sexually active adults are dying faster than their children can grow. In a nation where orphans are becoming the majority demographic, Dr. Hynd realized that orphans must be the remedy to Swaziland's grim prognosis.
That's why we're now preparing our kids to be the core children as peer leaders. And if you meet our children, you'll find they're pretty robust, pretty healthy bunch of kids.
After his mother died, Caleb became a street kid in the capital city of Baban. In 2002, he was among the first to be adopted by Dr. Hynd and was given the surname Abraham, as all New Hope children are. At 17, Caleb is the oldest of the children, and the staff is amazed at his recovery and capacity for leadership, something his country desperately needs.
Yeah, in Swaziland there is this thing that on 2015 there will be all the people here, they will be dead. So it will be just us, the little ones.
Caleb is currently preparing to attend university, to become a pastor, and to represent Swaziland as a swimmer in the 2012 Olympic Games. Whether he knows it or not, he is also preparing to lead a lost generation into what he envisions to be a bright future.
Well, my dream for Swaziland is, no matter how people are saying about my country, I'm very proud of my country. I'm willing to work for it all the days of my life. Swaziland is one day to be a big country.
Fascinating report, Nick. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit about how you ended up in Swaziland.
Well, I'm doing the international reporting track at school at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism, and we're expected to do a international internship. And I applied for the internship with International Bridges to Justice, which is a non-governmental organization that works mostly with criminal justice issues all over the world.
And how did you end up doing a story on HIV then, if that's international criminal justice?
I was there with a print reporter, Walker Gunning, and we had a little downtime, so we decided to focus our attentions on the HIV crisis in Swaziland, because the HIV, as you know, is a problem all over Africa, but we felt Swaziland was unique in its severity, and it's a little obscure. Most Americans probably haven't even heard of Swaziland, much less the situation there, so we felt it was important.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with more stories right after this.
There are 35 million Latinos in the United States, but what exactly is a Latino? That's not a simple question, and the answer requires going beyond stereotypes. 219 West reporter Aisha Al-Muslim explores the diversity within the Latino community.
45-year-old Fabiana Chiu came to the United States at age 21. Now she lives in New York and frequents a restaurant in Chinatown owned by Chinese Peruvians.
I really don't speak any. I speak enough to be able to order food, but if I go to a store and somebody tells me how much it is in Chinese, I have to count with my fingers.
Chiu is a fourth-generation Chinese Peruvian who identifies herself as an Asian Latina. She is among the estimated 300,000 Latinos in the United States who also identify as Asian. Chiu says she didn't feel different growing up in Peru. That changed when she got to the United States.
I ended up in a school in Kentucky. And in Kentucky, not only was I one of the few Asian-looking people, but I was definitely one of the few Spanish-speaking people. So people would ask me, who are you? Why do you not speak Chinese? You look Chinese. Why do you speak Spanish? It was the first time that people were asking me that wholesale. And it took me a little bit by surprise.
Jennifer Lopez, Eva Longoria, Ricky Martin, Antonio Banderas. These celebrities define the stereotypes in America of what Latinos look like. This makes many Latinos who don't fit the mold feel invisible, even among their own people. CNN's Latino in America sparked a debate about what it means to be Latino.
The faces that I saw were not the faces I grew up with. And I wish I had seen a little bit more of that diversity that exists within the Latino communities throughout the Americas.
35-year-old Tomoyo Hiroshi is a first-generation Japanese-Mexican. She lived among the estimated 35,000 Mexicans of Japanese descent until she came to the United States from Mexico at age 19. When she fills out the race category on forms, she feels she doesn't fit any of them.
I entered the U.S. as a Mexican citizen, so I always question myself, like, so are they talking about the technical aspect, the papers, or how I look, or where I'm from, or, you know, it's more complex than just a checkbox. So I usually avoid that, and I don't want to mark it because you can't. Your identity is so hard to describe sometimes.
32-year-old Carol Frazer has had the same experience. Frazer is Afro-Honduran. She is one out of an estimated 150 million people in Latin America who identify themselves as Afro-Latinos.
I'm always other because I'm Black Hispanic, and that category doesn't exist in forms. So I'm always other, and then I write Black Hispanic. I don't know. I think I understand why we're grouped like that. I think we couldn't possibly include every group.
When forced to choose a group, Latinos of African descent often choose African American because of skin color.
There's a book called Neither Friends Nor Enemies, Blacks, Latinos, and Afro-Latinos. And that's a very good, very conflicting question, but that's kind of the relationship as it starts out to be. But I think most Afro-Latinos, after a time, say, okay, no, I am Latino and I am Afro, and you know, I shouldn't have to pull to one side of being either only African American and considering myself for that, or only being Latino. I'm both.
For Hiroshi, proving she's a Latina often means proving she speaks Spanish.
For a lot of people, because I look so Asian and then speak a fluent Spanish with a very Spanish accent, they get very fascinated and awed. They don't expect that, definitely.
Chiu also speaks Spanish fluently. She doesn't think she's different from other Latinos.
Why is it that if you line me up with other Latinas and you ask anybody, pick the one who's not Latina, why is it that there's a chance that I might be the one who's picked? So I really challenge that. I really challenge that, especially because my family has been, and my people have been in Peru for 160 years. I mean, like, at what time is it going to be accepted that Latino is not a race, it's a culture, and that you can be of any race or any combination of races to be a Latina?
Just like Chiu, I'm also Latina. But when people see me, they might not know that I was born in Panama and that I speak Spanish. I consider myself Afro-Panamanian. This is why I wanted to tell the story of the many Latinos who don't fit the stereotypes of what it means to be Latino. Rima and Brian?
And that's it for this edition of 219 West. Thanks for being with us. I'm Rima Abdelkader.
And I'm Brian Winkowski. Next month, more stories about the people and issues of New York City. And we hope you find your way back to us. For now, from all of us at 219 West, happy holidays.